Okay, here we go. Good morning. Welcome. I'd like to welcome those of you that are here and those of you that are with us on the internet. I'm Pastor Jerry Dewitt. This is Good News Center Global in Houston, Texas. It is Sunday morning at about 11 o'clock and we are on live, and we would like to welcome you and thank you for being with us. Sorry, I have something in my eye all of a sudden. And we're glad you're here with us. And as I do every week, please share the page, like the page, follow us on Facebook. If you have friends or family that would be blessed by the messages and would like the messages, share it with them. We're also, if they don't have Facebook, we're also on YouTube, which you would go to YouTube and search Jerry Dewitt Ministries, and you will find us on YouTube. It'll be my face and a bunch of messages there on YouTube, so you can find it there. If you have prayer requests, please send them in to us at prayer@goodnewscenter.org, or you can send them to us on Facebook. We'll get them, and I'll make sure we'll pray for you and make sure they get out to the right people that we have around the world praying for you. And so with that, please also, trying to think what else, prayer request. If you have questions or comments, let us know. You can put it on Facebook or send them to us at the prayer request, prayer@goodnewscenter.org. I'll get that as well. Or like I said, YouTube, or Facebook, you can put it on Facebook. We just ask that you keep it nice and polite. If you agree or don't agree, keep it nice. I've learned over the years you can disagree and be nice all at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. In today's generation, some people think if you disagree, you've got to be really, really mean and harsh and loud and forceful. You don't. You just can disagree, and we can disagree. And so if you questions or comments, just keep it nice and send it to us. We love hearing from you. Also, please visit my website. I'm doing all this off the top of my head, so please visit my website at jerry.church, and you can see all about us. There's a store there. There's stuff you want to buy, there's lots and lots and lots of messages there. And if you'd like to give, that would be the place to give. We live by faith. The Lord takes care of us, but we live by faith. And so we give the opportunity for people to give. If you'd like to give, that's where you can do it, jerry.church. And you give there. There's a link. Click on that. It'll tell you how to do whatever it is you need to do. So, is that it? I think I got it all. I'm trying to cut the announcements down, get it down in time where I don't go on and on and on and on with announcements, because it's the same announcements every week unless we have new stuff in several weeks. We throw this in for Christmas. We will be leaving, so I'm going to preach this week, next week, and after that we will be out for several weeks. And so 2 or 3 weeks, it's looking now. So we'll be away for Christmas and for the holidays. So I'll share that with you again next week. Okay, I think that's it. Let's turn to the book of Philippians. Philippians chapter 3. We're making our way through the book of Philippians. This is part 14, I think. Something like that. Philippians 3. We ended in verse 7 last time. Was it? Yeah, verse 7 last time. I'm going to start in verse 4 this time. I'm going to back up a little bit and actually start in verse 4 because it needs to be all this needs to be in here this week. So, Philippians 3:4. It says, "Though I might also have confidence in the flesh, if any other man think that he hath whereof he might trust in the flesh, I more." He said, though I might also have confidence in the flesh. Literally that means I having but not using confidence in the flesh. That's contrary to church doctrine today, or people today, a lot of people today. They think I have, my flesh is something, I've built my flesh up, I built my life up, I have confidence in this flesh. Because look how smart I am. Look how accomplished I am. Look how rich I am. Look how successful I am. And we judge ourselves. We base our confidence in the world. And I've often said, people say, I'm confident in God. I'm confident in this, I'm confident in that. I'm confident in the Lord. I said, okay, if you're confident in the Lord, if you wound up in a dungeon in complete isolation for the rest of your life, would you still have the same confidence? Would your confidence be in the Lord at that point? Or would you crumble in why has God left me? He said, I having but not using. That's the mark of a Christian. I having but not using confidence in the flesh. So it's one thing to be confident, but it's another thing, that you're accomplished in your life, but it's another thing to use it. Use it out there. It makes me spiritual. It makes me more spiritual, because he says what he was talking about was his life before. So we get confident from our life before we get saved, and we're still confident in that life. And I've often thought, if we're so confident in that life, why did we get saved? Why do we need to get saved? Why do we need to get born again if that life was so fulfilling, so wonderful, so good, so much to give us confidence? Why did I need that life? We can't ever answer that question, because we've put our confidence in the flesh. And to say, well, to answer that question, you'd have to say, I don't need confidence in this flesh then. So let me go on. I don't want to get caught here. That I might have confidence in this flesh. If any other man thinketh he hath whereof he might trust in the flesh, I more. So trust in the flesh is a settled persuasion, a trust or dependence. And he said, if you think you got a reason to trust your flesh, to have a settled persuasion or a dependence on your flesh, he said, you think you got a reason? I've got more. And in verse 5, he goes into it. And he says, circumcised the 8th day, the stock of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of the Hebrews, and is touching the law, a Pharisee. See, what is he saying? This is what I am in the flesh. There was 5 things. Circumcised the 8th day, stock of Israel, tribe of Benjamin, Hebrew of Hebrews, touching the law, a Pharisee. In that day and age, he had it all going on. Everything that could be good, he was. Everything that was the top of the heap, he was. Everything that was considered wonderful, good, right, and wonderful, he was. And in all of that, what would it be today? You come from a wealthy family. You go to the right schools, you have the right job, you drive the right car, you live in the right neighborhood. Your kids now go to the right schools. You wear the right clothes, you know the right people, you say the right things. Because there's so much today with political correctness. You run in the right groups. And for us today, that would be an equivalent, what I am in the flesh. So you have to identify, what am you in the flesh? What are you in the flesh? And I'm play on words. I just got a reaction out of my wife, the English teacher, when I use bad English on purpose. So what are you in the flesh? You have to be able to say, this is what I am. And then automatically, do I have confidence in that? Do I still trust that? Do I put my faith and my dependence on that? Is that what's going to open the doors for me? So Paul was saying, I'm circumcised the 8th day, stock of Israel, tribe of Benjamin, Hebrew of Hebrews, a Pharisee. And then verse 6, he said, concerning zeal, persecuting the church, touching the righteousness which is in the law, I'm blameless. And so this is, before verse 5 is what I am in the flesh. Verse 6 is what I did in the flesh. So he's saying, concerning zeal, I persecuted the church. Consider his zeal for the church. He murdered for God. He murdered. He got people put in jail. He killed people. He oversaw people dying. And he persecuted. He took it on himself to destroy the church of Jesus Christ until he got saved. And then touching the righteousness which is in the law, he was blameless, deserving no censure, free from all valid charge, free from fault or defect. He was perfect in the law. He had it all worked out. He was what the law said. He was all of that. And so he said, you think you've got a reason to have confidence in the flesh? I having but not using confidence in the flesh. See, he said, you think you've got reason, I've got more. And then he lists, this is what my confidence, this is what I have. This is my pedigree. This is where I come from. This is who I am. This is what I did. This is the life that I lived. This is where I was going. In the flesh, in the world. And I have no confidence in that anymore. So verse 7, this is where I wanted to get to now. Verse 7, but what things were gain to me, those I counted loss for Christ. What things were gain to me? And in the Greek, it means gain to me means gains to me. What it brought gain to me was profit, advantage, assets, including all possible advantages of outward status. Everything that made me profitable, everything that profited me, everything in this flesh I could use to profit me and get myself ahead, get the advantage over other people, get, bigger assets, more money, and have all possible advantages for outward status, because that was the thing. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have money. I'm not saying we shouldn't profit. I'm not saying we shouldn't be good in business. What I am saying is we shouldn't use all of that so I can get ahead of everybody else, so I can be the top. That's the biggest thing, the top thing, to be on top. To be, we call it the top dog. The guy on the top of the hill, the top of the heap, the one that I'm in control of everything, I'm in control of everybody, I get to call the shots. I'm the guy that everyone turns to when they need something, to somebody to look up to. I'm that guy. But that's important to me. See, if you answer that way, then the world is gain to you. Paul was saying all these things, everything, but what things were gain to me, those I counted loss. To count something means to consider, to deem, or to think it. And that word, the word in the Greek, speaks of the process completed in past time having present results. It's not just, oh yeah, that's nothing to me. I count that as a loss. I consider that loss in my life. That's gone. But you still play with it. You still toy with it. What this is talking about is, I counted my temper loss 38 years ago, and it has a present result today. Well, I don't have a temper. I don't tear people up. I don't get mad. I don't go fly off the handle. I don't lose my temper and yell at people and scream and holler and jump up and down. Some people talk about it. They talk about counting something lost, and it's all gone. But in the Greek, it means it's a past act. It's a process completed in past times. It was completed. It wasn't present that you just talk about, but back then it was completed. And now when the crisis comes, you see the present results. The present result is, I don't lose my temper. The present result is, I don't get bitter. The present result is, I don't have fear. The present result is, when you deem something a loss in your life, means it has no more influence, no more say, no more power in your life. You deem it loss. You consider it. You counted it loss. That I did it in times past, and now the present results are visible. You can see it. It's not enough to talk about it and say, oh yeah, Jesus has set me free. I am set free. And all you're doing is confessing it. That's not counting something. That's not something counted as loss. That's something you're wishing is lost, or you're hoping is lost, or you'd like it to be lost, but it's still there because there's no present result. If you've counted something, there's a present result. A long time ago, I got married. And my wife and I got married. And at that point, I counted myself married. And you know what happened? In the present result of me counting myself married then, I don't date other women. I don't run around on my wife. I don't do a whole bunch of things. Why? I'm married. And I counted myself married, and it shows up in my life now. It's got a present result. I'm trying to get you to see when you count something, what that really means. When you consider it, it's, oh yeah, I'm like that. But you're not really. It's not faking it. It's not hoping. It's not confessing it. It's not living a lie. It's not living from behind a mask. It's not hoping nobody sees. It's a past act, a past completed process. Jesus died for me, and because of that, I'm born again, and my life is changed now. All that was important in my life before, all that was gained to me before, my temper, my nature, my lust, my bitterness, my strife, where I was going in life, what I was doing in life, my outlook, my attitude, the spirit that I had, the direction my life was taking, all that is deemed loss, is considered loss, is counted loss, because back then it was counted loss. Today, it's not even in my life anymore. It has no influence, no direction, no power, no nothing. It's not part of my life. It's a completed act, a past completed process with present results. Are you seeing the present results from something you deemed a long time ago? Something you counted a long time ago? How many times have you been hurt and you counted, someone says, you got to get over that. Oh, I'm over it. I'm over it. Until something happens and you realize it wasn't a past completed process. You didn't complete that process of getting over it in the past because somebody said something and wham, there it is, all over again. You're in the person's not even there and you're arguing with them. The person's not even there and haven't been part of your life for decades, and all of a sudden they're influencing your life all over again. Somebody said something to you in the 4th grade and somebody made a joke, and you're 40, 50, 60 years old, somebody makes a joke and it's the same thing that 4th grader said, and you go off the handle. You lose your mind. Why? You haven't counted that dead, that pain and hurt and what was said to you, that thing that was put in your mind, you haven't counted it as loss because it still has power in your life. If you've counted something, then there is present results. I'm laboring this point on purpose. There's present results. So Paul said, what's gained to me, I count as loss. Loss means one thing, forfeit. I have forfeited all my rights to that. I forfeited all my feelings about it, all my rights, all that it would bring me, all that the power of his life would bring him. He counted it as loss. All his temper, all his anger, all his meanness. I mean, to sit and watch people die, I'm sorry, you got to have a certain amount of mean going on. Yeah, callous and mean. You can't sit and oversee the death of innocent people without having a certain amount of mean going on. And he said, and then later on, I know people, they don't do that, but they're mean to other people and yet call themselves Christians. You can't do that. Mean and love don't have the same, they can't coexist. They can't come out of the same fountain. It's either fresh water or salt water. And so what I'm saying there is, some people, it's like two people. You can't, see, I'm straight with people at times. My wife is straight with people at times. I'm not being mean, I'm being honest, and I'm telling you the easiest and, the most efficient way of telling you. I'm trying to get through to you what's going on in your life, what you need to change, what you need to do to help you. It's not mean. Some people might say, well, you're just mean. No, I'm not mean. I love you. That's why I'm trying to help you. That's why I'm trying to get through to you. Virgil taught me a long time ago, he said, if your flesh is there, I'm going to get at it. He said, but I'm doing it to help you. But if I can get to it, the devil can get to it, and he's going to do it to try and destroy you. So there's a difference between mean and love. And so he counted all that he did, all that he was, what he was in the flesh, what he did in the flesh. He counted it all loss. He didn't go around patting himself on the back with his testimony saying, I was the best sinner. I was the worst sinner. I killed Christians. Patting himself on the back. He said, I did this. And I could glory in my flesh, but I count all this as loss. It has no bearing on my life now. What you did in the past, what your testimony in the past was, the past. It should have no bearing on your life. And I've known preachers coming up that's all they did was share their testimony. Testimony on top of testimony on top of testimony, testimony, all the same testimony over and over and over and over and over again. And I've known a few preachers like that. And, at what point do you leave that and go on into godliness? You go on to perfection. That, what Hebrews says, let's laying all the principles, laying down all this other stuff, all the basics, let's go on to perfection. At some point, this is what I was, this is what I did, but it should have no more bearing. There should be a point of, yeah, that was me, but this is me now. I share stuff in my past, but I do it as examples. Not because it affects my life anymore. And the only reason I share it is because it has no bearing on my life. It has no impact on my life. I do it for illustrative purposes. And so he said, what was gained to me, I count as loss. And verse 8, I was making sure that clock didn't stop. That's why it turned. So I just have to go on from this. He says, so what things were gained to me, those I counted loss for Christ. Yea, doubtless, and I count all things but loss. So I have to go on because it goes on in this point. He said, but yea, doubtless, I count all things but loss. That's the same as verse 7. I count is the same as counted. Consider, deem, think. In the present tense, showing continuous action in present time is what it means. This is more of a present tense thing, but it's the same thing. It's I count now. Before it was I counted, so that was past. Now he says I count. It's a present completed. Showing continuous action in present time. What was in the past, I counted loss. You know what? What was in the past, I still count loss. It's a present day thing. I don't go back to it because, that was then, now I'm moving forward, but I'm going to go back to it. He says, I count all things as loss. That's damage or forfeit. Paul's estimates of the things which he had formerly valued, and it was all those things in verse 5 and 6. Before you got saved, what was important to you? Think about it. What was important to you? What was the thing in your life that was, this is it. This is what makes me. This is who I am. I count all things as loss. How many of us don't count all things loss? We hold on to hurts. We hold on to pain. We hold on to wrongdoing. We hold on to bad things that happened in life. I've known people that would tell you save 20, 30 years and tell you when I was a kid this happened and still reliving it every time they told the story over and over and over and over again. And when you say something to them, they get mad at you. It's like, and I'm thinking one person in particular, I tell him, I'm trying to help you. And get mad, you're this and you're that, and okay, never mind. I'm just trying to help. And what happens is we live in those past and we let the past influence our present. We let the past influence what happened to me then, we let influence me now. How many times have you been hurt and rejected by people and it still, to this day, influences you? I was hurt and rejected so often that it was a way of life. When I was growing up, I didn't know what it meant to not be rejected. I didn't know what it meant to not be alone. I didn't know what it meant to be accepted and loved and those kinds of things. I didn't know what that meant until I got saved, until I got born again, and the Lord accepted me. And there were people in my life accepted me. My wife accepts me. And I'm a lot to accept. She told me, we were cutting up the other day, and she said, there's not a lot of women in this world could be married to you. I said, I know that. I got the one special one. And because
I told you there's only one.
Yeah, she said there's only one. But we say it in such a way that I am happy-go-lucky. When I start cutting up, I cut up. My sense of humor can get away from me. But I'm happy. And my wife is very happy. And we're just happy people. And so when we start cutting up, it can get happy around here. And we'll just laugh and, joke and play and pick and play. But we've left all the hurt behind us. And some people never leave that hurt behind them. They take it to the grave with them. Why? Because you've not counted loss. You've not counted all things loss. How important is your family? I'm not talking about your children. I'm talking about extended family. Because in so many cultures, extended family is everything. That we have to do all the big gatherings. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying, how many of you, it's just all important. It's the big thing. You would not go to church. You would not do the things of God because, the family gathering, the family reunion, the family gathering, the family's all getting together. And we have to have, this special event or that special event or that special event. See, we don't count all things as loss. What's more important? He says, I count all things loss except for the excellency of the knowledge of God. What takes the place of that? Family, hurt, pain, jealousy, strife, even your kids. I've got to go to my kids' recital, but the Lord told you go pray for that person. And they're going to die in half an hour, but I've got to go to my kids' recital. I think I've told this story somewhere before, but I learned the point from Virgil, where he was preaching a meeting somewhere, and in the middle of preaching, the Lord told him, stop now, give an altar call. Stop now. Give the altar call. And he's preaching, and he said in his mind, I'm almost finished with this point. As soon as I finish this point, I'll give an altar call. And he kept going, and it wasn't, 30 seconds, a minute, two, I forget how long. But he said some guy got up and ran out of his tent. He just ran, and he knew that guy was going to, was wanting to get saved, but he got up and ran out of the tent, and Virgil said, I never saw him again. And he said, I never lost sight of that fact that God told me, and it may have cost that guy his salvation because I didn't listen. And he said, me finishing my point, he was a younger preacher, me finishing my point was more important than what God spoke to me. And so many Christians nowadays, what do we count as not loss? What is it that's not a loss to us? He said, I count all things lost except for the excellency of the knowledge of God. The knowledge of Jesus Christ, my Lord. So what is it in your life that's not lost? I count all things. What is it that you're holding on to that motivates you, influences you, causes you to do things, causes you to act in ways, causes you to lose your temper, be stressed, have anxiety, have fear in your life? I was out walking this morning, and there's a deputy in our area that he stops and watches traffic, and we become friends, and I've talked to him quite often. And we were talking about something, and driving or something. We were just kind of cutting up and just talking. And I said, it doesn't bother me because I'm going to die one day. I'm not afraid to die. I'm going to die one day. He said, that's a really interesting way of looking at that. He said, I never quite thought about it, but it's true. I said, yeah, everybody's going to die of something. And so I said, I just don't worry about it. See, I have counted loss the fear of death. It's a loss to me. I told him, I'm going to heaven. I know I'm going to heaven when I die. What is it that you haven't counted loss, that you hold on to? Because it's all important. He said, I count all things loss, all things but loss for the excellency of the knowledge of Jesus Christ my Lord. All things but except for the excellency. Excellency is a surpassing thing, which is the knowledge of Christ. Everything else is secondary to the excellency of the knowledge of Christ. The surpassing thing is the knowledge of Christ. And that's knowledge gained through experience of intimate fellowship and communion with Jesus Christ. How many of us, that's the all-important thing? And that's not church. This is an intimate relationship and knowledge gained through experience with intimate fellowship and communion with Jesus. Can you get that in church? Yes. It helps. As you're starting out as a young Christian, yes. But it should go over into your private life that it's all one life. My church life, my private life, all one life. Today, and for too many Christians, their church life and their private life is two different worlds. And so what happens is our life in the world becomes more important, more excellent. The excellency, the surpassing thing becomes, I have to be accepted in my job. I have to be accepted in the world. I have to be accepted in society. Instead of the surpassing thing being the knowledge, the excellency of the knowledge of Jesus Christ. And the knowledge being an experience, a knowledge gained through experience with God. How much experience do you have with God? And so, let me see where I am. I'm trying to decide whether to tell a story. This way, I'll tell you the story. I have experience with God. And I'll tell you what happened this week. I was driving and I had an appointment. I was going somewhere and I was coming up to a four-way stop. And I was on the phone with somebody on my Bluetooth. I was talking on the phone. And the Lord spoke to me and said, stop all the way. You know, I don't remember the exact phrase, but the essence of the phrase was complete stop all the way. And so I got up to the stop sign and I felt the weight of the car shift. So I stopped all the way for a split second. And then I went forward. Well, as I turned the corner and went down, there was a policeman there and I got pulled over and got a ticket. He said, you didn't stop at the stop sign. I didn't see him until I had turned. And the Lord tried to warn me, but I didn't take full heed of it. I did stop, but now I got to fight it in court. So the thing is, do we listen close enough from this point forward? When the Lord speaks to me like that, I know, stop fully and overdo. So I didn't overdo. But I get this, you get this from experience with God. Are you trying to say God was getting you out of a ticket? Yes. He's done it before. He's done it many times. He takes care of me. That's an intimate relationship. If my wife's doing something and I think it's going to be harmful or dangerous or just going to wind up badly, I'll tell her, don't do this, watch out, do this, do this, do this, because I love her and I want her to be happy. The Lord loves me. He wants me to be happy. I stopped, but in the policeman's eyes, you didn't stop. So, we have the situation now, and it's no big deal. I'll handle it in court. But the point being, intimate relationship with God, what will it do for you? It takes time to get to where that's the excellent part. The surpassing thing is knowledge of intimate relationship, experiential knowledge of intimate relationship with Jesus. Make sense? Okay. Verse 8. Let me go on. For whom I have suffered loss of all things and count them, my wife's favorite verse, but dung, that I may win Christ. But I have suffered for whom I have suffered the loss of all things. Suffered the loss means the act of forfeiting what was the greatest value in my life. What was the most important thing to you? What made you you? That's the thing. That's where too many Christians don't want to go. What made you the person you were? Are you willing to forfeit that for Jesus Christ? Are you willing to suffer the loss because of the excellency of the knowledge of God? I have an intimate relationship with God now. I have experience with Jesus. It's changed my life. So I am willing to suffer loss of everything I was back there. And it could just be that you were just the most stubborn person in the world. That nobody could tell you anything. You did what you wanted to do. You didn't care about anybody. You didn't love anybody. You lived your life, and it's my life, and I'm going to take care of me, and I don't care about anybody else. Are you willing to give that up? Are you willing to forfeit that? Forfeiting all of that for the excellency of the knowledge of Christ. Now let's look at Paul for just a second. Paul was a citizen of Tarsus. We think, well, it wasn't hard for Paul. He was a horrible person. Paul was a citizen of Tarsus. At the time he lived there, only families of wealth and reputation were allowed to retain their Tarsian citizenship. Only the top were allowed to do that. This tells you about Paul's early life. He was born into a home of wealth and culture. His family were wealthy Jews living in one of the most progressive of Oriental cities. Paul left all of this to become a poor itinerant preacher, a poor itinerant missionary. He walked away from lifestyle, everything he was, everything he was going to be, because of the call of God on his life. What causes you to do that? The call of God, the excellency of the knowledge of Jesus Christ. He had an experience with Jesus. Saul, it's hard to kick against the pricks. God spoke to him directly. He got born again. His life got changed. And he didn't change it back. He didn't hold on to half and give up half. Well, I'll just stop killing Christians, but I'm still going to be a top Jew. I still like, being everybody, setting their cloaks at my feet. I still like being looked up to. He set it all down. What is it that we're willing to set down to become something else? I walked away from college. I walked away from my life. I didn't know where my life was going, but I walked away from all of it to go into the ministry. People in school, when I knew I was leaving college, they'd ask me, where are you going? What are you going to do? I said, I'm going in the ministry. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I wasn't in the ministry yet. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. I didn't know where. I didn't know what. I knew nothing. But I knew that I was suffering the loss of my life. I was forfeiting my life. And I was telling people, I'm going into the ministry. My family thought I was crazy. And I left college and went to work in a grocery store. Then I went to work in a furniture store. And during this time, I had gotten into the ministry. I started preaching. And I started going to different schools. I went to a discipleship training school. And then at that point, I went to work at a church in the ministry. Then left there, went to Youth with a Mission, and I was in the ministry at that point. But I counted all that as loss. And so Paul said, and do count them but dung, that I may win Christ. I'm not going to go into that story. So I count them but dung. What is dung? It's excrement, cast off, refuse. That which is thrown away as not worthy of being any more touched or looked at. We don't like to do that. In churches today, come give your testimony. We like to tell people how bad we were to make us look good as Christians.
How bad we had it.
Or how bad we had it, or how bad things were, or all this other stuff. I don't tell people how, what my life was like, and I said before, what my life was like for you to feel sorry for me. I just do it to say, here's where I came from, here's what the Lord did for me. But some people like to touch it, relive it, re-experience it, go back into it. See, if it's refuse, it's no more touch it, and you no more get to look at it and live in it. And I wonder if if I'd only this, if I'd only that. When I left my life, I got born again and left that life, I never looked back. I honestly didn't look back. There was one time I was frustrated and said, I'm going to quit. And I wasn't looking back at that life. I was looking at what I was going through at the time and said, this is just too hard. And the Lord spoke to me and said, if what you had was so good, why'd you leave it in the first place? And I said, makes entirely too much sense, and I've walked with God ever since. But I've never looked back, never wondered what if, never wondered I could have done this and gone to this business and that, or done this and finished school and done all this. Never once. Why? I counted it as dung. It was excrement, cast off. In America, I'm going to say this part, we call it poop. It's poop. It's only stuff that's meant to be thrown out. It's not anything you want. It's stuff that'll make you sick. If you look at back through history, the Black Plague, they think, or some of the plagues were caused by lack of sanitary conditions. Yeah, lack of sanitary conditions. What does that mean? Poop got in the water, and poop got in the food, and it caused a plague. What does dung and all this stuff in your life cause? A plague. It'll cause nothing but bad, nothing but harm in your life. It'll make you sick spiritually. It'll make you sick physically. It'll tear up your life. It'll destroy your life. It'll kill people around you. Your stuff that you're holding on to, it'll kill you. It'll kill those that love you. Why? Because we're holding on to excrement. We're keeping it in our lives. We're keeping the dung as part of us and saying, this is important that I have this. It's not. It's not important. What's important? The excellency of the knowledge of Jesus Christ. That's all that's important. When it comes to living, what do I need to know? How to have an experience, an experiential relationship, an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. That I am born again, my life is tied together with His, we are one in Jesus. So it's cast off, refuse, excrement, that which is to be thrown away and not worthy of being touched or looked at. That what? That I may win Christ. Win here is the same, it's in verse 7. It means to gain. And it's what it is to appropriate all aspects of the life of Jesus. Have you appropriated all aspects of His life? Here's a better question. Do you even think it's possible? Do we as Christians think it's possible to live as Jesus lived? I had someone tell me several weeks ago, I was talking to a guy I know. And when people hear you're a preacher or they know you're a preacher, they like to church speak. And he said, we're all just sinners. And at that point I said, no, I'm not. What? I'm not a sinner. What? What are you talking about? We're all sinners. I said, not me. No, I said, I'm a Christian. I was a sinner. I am a Christian. I'm a born again believer. And he stopped and that's true. I have to think about that. That's true. And he's a church guy. He goes to a church, and I was trying to tell him I'm not a sinner anymore. I said there's sin and there's righteousness. I don't walk in sin. You walk in sin makes you a sinner. You walk in righteousness, it makes you righteous. It makes you a Christian. I said I'm a righteous person. I don't walk in sin. And I said, now, if we sin, we have an advocate with the Father. But I said that's if, not when. And so I got into it a little bit, but how many of us believe we can have we can appropriate all aspects of the life of Jesus? What are those aspects? The fruits of the Spirit, the gifts of the Spirit, the grace of God, and all that comes with that. How about this one? Perfection. Everybody likes that word. Are you perfect in your life? Can you appropriate that perfection? Living in what you know, living the life that you know, living everything that you know you should live? And so it's to appropriate all aspects of the life of Jesus, to so practically appropriate Jesus to yourself that He becomes the dominating power in and over your whole being in all your circumstances. That's appropriation. That's to win Christ. Well, I've won him. What do you mean win him? Like a race, win him? You're racing with your flesh. You're fighting with your flesh. You're fighting with your nature. You've got a competition going. The flesh wars against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh. And so, yes, there's a battle going on. But he said, I count all things as dung. Everything that I was, everything that I did before I got saved. All of that, the person that I was, and the actions and the attitude and the things that I did, I count them as loss. I've forfeited all of that, everything that influenced my life, that I may win Christ, that I can have the excellency of the knowledge of Jesus Christ, that I might win Him. I might appropriate Him, and to do so in such a way that He becomes the dominating power in my life and over my circumstances. Because everybody can say, oh, He's the dominating power in my life. I just follow the Lord. But when your circumstances kick up, what's dominating you then? What comes out of you at that point? What is the driving force in your life when the whole world falls apart? When things go wrong, things go bad, people don't act like they should, they turn on you, life turns on you, life is bad, everything goes down. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? The dog bites you and then he dies. The car blows up. Things just happen. You lose your job. Your kid loses his mind and, just starts acting like the neighbor kid. And things happen and family turns on you and life gets bad. What dominates your circumstances? What is the dominating power in your life at that point? And I'm trying to build a big, nasty picture. But you have to look and see what dominates me. Because some Christians, if you look at them funny, you know what dominates them. And it's nothing godly. It's not the fruit of the Spirit, and it's definitely not grace or perfection or love. It's, who do you think you are? Their pride kicks up. Some people, I go with their pride. And I'll needle them till their pride shows up. And I do it just so you can see it. I know it's there, and I know the devil's coming at me. So I can feel the devil. I can feel that bad spirit. So I go at it. Because I'm dominated by the Spirit of God. And my circumstances are dominated by the Spirit of God. I know when to do it. I know how to do it. I know when I can get away with it, and I know when I can't. So I know who I can help, and I know who I can't help. If there's no help, I don't try. Why? Because my circumstances and my life is dominated. I have an intimate relationship with Jesus. So Paul said, I count all things as loss. Yea, doubtless I count all things but loss for the excellency of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things. I forfeited everything and do count them but dung. I count all that was important to me as poop, that I may win Christ, that I may appropriate Him in appropriate all the aspects of the life of Jesus Christ. That's the power, the love, the patience, gentleness, meekness, faith, temperance, love, joy, every aspect of His life, the resurrected power, every aspect of His life what am I doing? I'm appropriating that. I'm making it part of me. Verse 9. And be found in Him, not having my own righteousness, which is of the law, but that which is through faith in Christ, the righteousness which is of God by faith. So he said, I count all things but dung, that I may win Christ. I can appropriate Him, appropriate all aspects of His life, and be found in Him. This is to be found. Being found in Him is to be found by people observing your life, that your life demonstrates Christ. I'm trying to say this correctly. That is to be found by observing people watching you, that your life demonstrates that you are in Christ. That's what that being found in Him means. People watch you. What do they see? Do they see that your life demonstrates Jesus Christ and Him crucified? Does it demonstrate the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus? That's what being found in Him is. That my life, I'm no longer here. It's no longer my life, but Him. Colossians 3:3 says, your life is hid with Christ in God. That's what being found in Him is. If my life is hid with Christ in God, and people look at your life, what are they going to see? Christ in God. They're going to see Jesus Christ, and they're going to see the glory of God in your life. Do we want to work on our lives to such a degree? Do we want to forfeit our life to such a degree that when people, observing people, not just people off the street, but people that are watching, observing people, not just the guy walking down the road, oh, you must be a Christian. Oh, we pat ourselves on the back. Yes, sir. Yes, I am. But it's the people that know your life, the people that watch your life, the people that are around you day in and day out. What do they see when they see you? Do they see Jesus? They're looking at your life. Does your life demonstrate Jesus Christ and Him crucified? Or does your life demonstrate my old life? I'm in my old life. I can live like I want, do what I want, but I can call myself a Christian. What is your life demonstrating? What do they see? The love of God? All the aspects of Jesus? Or do they see the world? So he said that I might be found in Him, not having mine own righteousness. Mine own righteousness is not having any righteousness which can be called my own. Paul didn't desire to be seen to have any righteousness that would be the result of law keeping for him. That my old life was this, and I was in the law, and I was righteous in the law. Because what did he say back here? As touching the law, a Pharisee. As touching righteousness which is in the law, blameless. See, to be righteous according to the law would have been his old life. Are we righteous, and how does that translate to us? Are we righteous according to the world's standard? That's your own righteousness. See, I'm righteous because of what Jesus has done in me. I'm right because I'm born again. I'm right because the Spirit of God lives in me. I'm right because I don't live in sin in my life. I'm right because I pray, I read my Bible, I preach, I do the will of God. It's not the things, but it's the will of God in my life. That's what makes me righteous. He's saying I don't have a righteousness which is of my own, but a righteousness which is of God by faith. And so my old life doesn't make me righteous. The world's standard of righteousness, I don't care about. It means nothing to me. Because I've had people say, well, you can do this and still be a Christian. I don't know. That's your standard, not by biblical standards. And some people, I tell them, not by the Bible standard. We've had people say, well, you can live together and not be married, and and actually someone told us this, and it's okay. Marriage is a thing made up by just a piece of paper made up by men, and we were dumbfounded. But it's like I never heard such a thing. But that's people. They'll make up their own rules. They'll make up their own laws. They'll make up their own standard of righteousness. And so he's saying, I don't have my own righteousness. I don't make it up as I go. I don't make it up according to the world. Because at that point, Judaism had become the world to him. It was the world. Christianity was now the church. And so he was a born-again believer, and he said, I don't look at the world and say, I was righteous in the world, but that's all gone now. Now I'm righteous in God. But he said the righteousness which is of God by faith. This is a righteousness or perfect holiness of Christ appropriated by faith. I am right in my life because of grabbing hold of Jesus Christ, and it's appropriated by faith on the basis, this appropriation by faith. I have to see, this stuff can get kind of complicated, and so I have to bring it to where I understand enough that I can explain it. So it's appropriated by faith, and this appropriated faith is the basis of the confidence of the believer, and it's a new principle of life. So when we're appropriating something by faith, what are we doing? We're bringing a new principle of life into my life. I'm living something new. I see it in the Bible, and by faith, Lord, I know this is what you're doing. I see it. I'm convicted. I know this is right. This is the thing to do. So what am I doing? I'm now applying this to my life by faith, knowing I have the Spirit of God that's going to help me get this thing activated in my life and working in my life, that it becomes part of me. And what does that do to me? It builds confidence. It builds confidence. So it's this appropriated faith which is the basis of the confidence of the believer. And the righteousness which is by faith, which is of God by faith, is the righteousness or perfect holiness of Christ. That's how we should be living. And so this new principle of life is what? It includes a new disposition and sanctification. You should have a new disposition in life. You're living a new life. Isn't it time we start acting like it? Isn't it time we start showing that new life? Isn't it time we start doing things differently, acting differently? You know, they say you got to be tough and mean in business. Why? Why do you have to be mean and act tough and strong and rough and tumble? Why can't you be loving and kind and still hold your ground as a businessman? As a Christian businessman and a worldly businessman should be they should act two different ways. You can still get the same result, but in two different ways. So let me go on, finish this. Verse 10. It says that let me read this again, verse 9. And be found, because I got to keep it all in context. And be found in him, not having mine own righteousness, which is of the law, but that which is through the faith of Christ, the righteousness which is of God by faith, that I may know him and the power of his resurrection. Okay, all that stuff that we said, being found in him, not having my own righteousness, but the righteousness which is of God by faith. Why do we need that? What does it bring? It brings four things, and that's verse 10. Four things. Number one, that I may know him. That I may know him is that I may come to know him in the fullness of experiential knowledge. This only comes by being like him. That we're transformed into his image. How do you get full experiential knowledge of Jesus Christ and God in heaven? By becoming like them. And Paul said, I don't want my own righteousness. I want to be found in him. All these things coming before, I want to be found in him, not having my own righteousness, righteousness by faith. Number one, that I may know him, that I may come to know him in his fullness. How much do we want to know the fullness of God? And that fullness, is that just the power of God? Or do you want him in his fullness? All the fruit, all the gifts, all the love, all the patience, all the long suffering, all the emotion that God feels, all the righteousness that Jesus had. The Amplified says it this way, that I may progressively become more deeply and intimately acquainted with him. That sounds like something I want to do. That I may be found in him. That people watching me, they can see Jesus in me. They can see, number one, that I know him. Number two, what did they say about the disciples? They looked and they could tell, they could see they had been with Jesus. Number two, they may know him and the power of his resurrection. This is to experience the same power which raised Christ from the dead. And power here in the Greek means that which overcomes resistance. That you can overcome any resistance in life. Knowing him, being in Christ, that my life is hid with Christ in God. What does that do? Gives you power to overcome any resistance that the world can throw at you, the devil can throw at you, your life can throw at you, your circumstances can throw at you. You can overcome. It's experiencing the same power which gave Jesus victory over death, hell, and the grave. It's the same power. The exact same thing. And that was Power to overcome any resistance. Did Jesus have resistance?
Yeah.
All the time. Did he overcome that resistance? Every time. Every single time. I have down here as a note, this was not just power to get healings and miracles. It was power to overcome sin, death, hell, the grave, and the devil. Some people, the devil shows up and they panic. They just fall apart because, oh, the devil's here, the devil's after me. I have power to overcome the devil. I have power over the devil. I have power over everything that can come at me. I have power over death. And so, the guy I was talking to today, I told him, I'm not afraid to die. Why? That's power over death. I'm not afraid to die. One day I'm going to heaven. That's power. That's power that it doesn't bother me. I know where I'm going. And so number 3, fellowship of his sufferings. Number 3 and 4 we don't like in the church. We like that I may know him. We like that I have power of the resurrection. Number 3, we don't like fellowship of his sufferings. That's a joint participant with his sufferings for righteousness while on this earth. Well, people, I've never suffered for righteousness. Have you ever had to overcome your own flesh? That's suffering for righteousness. Some people have never suffered for righteousness because they've never overcome their flesh. They've never been attacked for being a Christian. They've never had to take a stand against the devil and never had to take a stand against what was wrong in life. Against people saying, you have to do this. No, I don't, I can't, I won't. I will not live that way. I do not live that way. I'm not going to act that way. I will not have that bad attitude. I refuse. Well, in your job, you have to lie to get ahead. I won't do it. See, that's suffering. I'm going to suffer in my job because I won't lie. Then suffer in your job and let the Lord promote you. Let your promotion come from above, not from man. And so, fellowship of his sufferings. If you fight your own flesh and overcome your nature and overcome sin in your life, that's suffering. You have to suffer because the flesh will fight you every step of the way. The devil, it dies hard, knowing it's going to live better, but it dies hard. And then number 4, conformable to his death. We don't want to die. That's to be formed and fashioned like, to bring to the same form the inner heart and outer expression. His death, death to self. You have to have the inner heart and the outer expression of the life of Jesus Christ. We figure I can have whatever heart I want inside because nobody knows. If I act a certain way, nobody knows. But we have to have the outward expression. So a lot of people have the outward expression. Some even don't have that. They're in church, but they don't have the outer expression. This says to be conformable is to be formed and fashioned like, to have the inner heart of Jesus and the outer expression of Jesus. He lived a righteous life out in the world. And he had the heart of God. You want to be conformable to his death? That's how you do it. That is death to self. All that I want, all that I am, death to self. Romans 8:13 says, mortify the deeds of the body. Mortify the deeds of your flesh. Put to death the deeds of your flesh. Conformable to his death. All this that we talk about, I want to know him, and we raise our hands and we clap and we sway and we move our hands, and now we have flags and we have the dancers and we have the people doing this and the people doing that and the smoke machines and all this stuff. It's all good and fine, I guess. But when it comes down to it, that's all the church stuff. But when it comes down to it, there's 4 things. The righteousness which is of God by faith leads us into verse 10. That I may know him, the power of his resurrection, the fellowship of his sufferings, and conformable to his death. There's no way around those 4 things. If you want to be a Christian, that's it. That spells it out. So where do we start today? That I might have confidence in the flesh, but if any other man thinks he's got confidence, I've got more. He went through it and he said, yea, doubtless I count all things as loss. We have to count things as loss. And that means dying to my own flesh, dying to myself. Those 4 things. Do we want to have those four things? That's being a Christian in our lives. Being found in Him that I may know Him, the power of His resurrection, fellowship of His sufferings, and conformable unto His death. I don't have my own righteousness anymore. Now I have His righteousness. His righteousness. We have to look at ourselves at some point. Take a good long look at ourselves and decide, what kind of life am I going to be? Do I count all things as lost except for the excellency of the knowledge of Jesus Christ? And I suffer loss and count all things as dung, that I may win Christ? Or am I holding on to everything because I like having my own righteousness? Look at your life. Evaluate your life. Decide what it is that you are, who you are. This is what I was. This is what I did. Is that still what you are and what you do? You have to look, or am I changed now? What I am is changed and what I do is changed. The life that I live is changed. I'm not doing the same things. I'm not the same person. I'm not acting the same way. I'm changed and I'm different. Why? Because I know Him. I have the power of His resurrection. I have the fellowship of His sufferings, and I'm conformable unto His death. Amen?
Amen.
Amen. All right. Amen. Made it through. Thank you for being with us. As I do every week, I appreciate you being here. I honestly do. I say that, and I don't just say it to say it. I say it because I honestly appreciate your listening. And so, like we do every week, please share the page, like the page, follow us on Facebook. If you have friends that they don't have Facebook and they want to follow us, they can go to YouTube and search for Jerry Do It Ministries, and you will find us on YouTube. Please go to the website at jerry.church. If you want to buy stuff, there's stuff there to buy. If you want to give and help our ministry, there's a way to do it there. You can go to give and it'll pop up. Also, if you have prayer requests, please send them to prayer@goodnewscenter.org. Questions or comments, you can send them there too, or post it on Facebook. As long as it's nice, I'll leave it up. So with all of that, we'll be here next week, and then after that we'll be off for 2 or 3 weeks as we're leaving for the Christmas holidays. And so I think I've got everything. Again, I'm Pastor Jerry Do It. This is Good News Center Global in Houston, Texas. I appreciate you being here with us. I'm glad that you are. And we're here every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, unless I tell you otherwise. And we're here Sunday morning, Houston, Texas time. So we're glad you're here with us, and I hope to see you again next week.